Welcome, Steffen.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. Steffen, you and I met back in 2018 when you were pitching for your seed round for Synthesia. I thought you were awesome, thought your co-founder Victor was awesome, but probably like many other people made the bad mistake of passing. It was at my previous firm, Hummingbird Ventures. I thought you two were awesome. I could see that you were going to do something special, but candidly, I didn't see the giant idea at that moment in time. I think you were pitching more around dubbing for media and Hollywood at that time. But fast forward to now, you have built a company that's valued at $2 billion. It's doing over 100 million of revenue, I believe. And you've built a remarkable, magical product that essentially turns text into video like magic. And you're working with over 80% of the Fortune 100 companies. So it's been quite a journey. So tell us, how you started, and I guess give the audience an essence of what this giant idea is.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Good to reconnect, Cameron.
Yeah, of course.
It's been a few years, but yeah, back then it was obviously less clear kind of how big and kind of how this kind of category would unfold. So I think there's definitely not only your fault, but I think the pitch was not as clear as kind of what the outcome has kind of gone back then. But back then it was kind of originally stemmed from like a research project. So we kind of partnered up with the two professors who kind of for the first time showcased how you can change and update video after the fact, so when it comes off camera. And the first kind of use cases or the things that kind of came to mind there was around kind of movie dubbing, kind of enriching and kind of taking content that has been shot with a camera and actually kind of translating that with the lip movements. But back then it was very much like a very unscalable solution. We had to kind of film somebody to then kind of create a new piece of content, and it was kind of inherently unscalable and not really kind of something that was almost kind of VC backable back then.
Yes.
But actually full circle. So we actually launched that product yesterday, where you can just one-click dub an existing piece of content with lip sync, with all these things that historically kind of required a full kind of 5 PhDs, kind of changing every frame to kind of create just a few seconds of new video. So it's kind of becoming full circle since then, and it's pretty awesome to kind of revisit that product and kind of getting that actual to life with this new kind of offering.
So let's talk about the idea itself. The current idea, the big idea, the giant idea, text to video. Is it as simple as that? That is the huge idea.
Yeah, I think if you kind of boil it down to kind of this notion of these kind of the technicalities of kind of typing in text and getting video out, right? I think that's kind of pretty magical. But I think what is also kind of allowing companies and individual creators, individual storytellers is also kind of really democratizing kind of, movie creation and storytelling per se, right? I think if we parallel it out to other creative disciplines, such as music creation, we're sitting in a music studio now, right? I think 10, 15 years ago, you needed to go to a Hollywood recording studio to create a top charting hit. Today, you can synthesize any tune in the universe on your laptop. And we think that the same kind of, creative disruption or creative kind of, democratization is going to happen to video, especially with these magical, amazing kind of, video models that's coming out. I think we're sitting right next to DeepMind, who kind of came out with the amazing View Free. And it's getting closer to this vision. When we started the company, right, we had this vision that you can create a Hollywood style movie on your laptop. And that is actually starting to really kind of come to fruition now. We said back then 10 years. So it's actually kind of, pretty close now, which is pretty kind of, amazing to see that how you kind of, are going on in this vision, right? And it's really allowing everybody in the world with a good story to actually kind of, express that with the techniques that has kind of, been a kind of monopoly in Hollywood with hundreds of millions of dollars for actors and movie studios and so forth. I think it's gonna, change what humans are not that good at in historic kind of terms, right? With repeatable processes, finding this very rudimentary and very kind of repeatable to something that is kind of more of creative nature, where humans are just kind of, much, much better at some of those tasks, right? So I think there's no doubt that I think by allowing more people to kind of get into the field and allowing them to have the techniques to kind of do these type of things, I think will be a positive force for sure. But I think it will have some kind of replacement of jobs in the long run for sure. But I think that's very general for a lot of AI today.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about where creativity will thrive then in the world of Synthesia, where it is about storytelling. So kind of, why would Cameron's storytelling prompt for Synthesia be better than mine? What is it about how he's going to write that that's going to be, more impressive than mine? Is it great writers will kind of thrive and create amazing videos? Will it be more the concept? Will it be quite technical things about how exactly you prompt, the level of detail? Who wins in that world?
I think it's people who are great storytellers in general, have like a lot of like creativity, have a lot of like good things around how they kind of tell stories, right? But I think it's gonna be those people who's working with these systems. There's also gonna be bouncing off ideas with these systems a lot, right? So I think it's important that you kind of continue to kind of work with this system and really kind of are trying to feedback off it, because that's kind of where you can kind of really put these technologies to the edge of where it's kind of good enough for, where is it not good enough for today. But I think it will be very different from where you are and what is the audience. And I think also like storytelling will fragment a lot. I think we'll kind of go from kind of very broadcast where we all kind of consume the same media in the cinemas to much more individualized feeds as we do on our phones with TikTok, where we have all unique feeds, right? We are all consuming very unique information, which is based on our interest, our kind of way of want to kind of consume information, right? And I think this will also just allow kind of storytellers to kind of have much more individualized, much more kind of fragmented kind of stories to distribute.
How close are we to creating video that is indistinguishable from video that was created by humans, or you're already there?
I think we're getting there. I think both with kind of the avatar technology we have, I think we're really kind of starting to get there. We're launching Express 2, which is our latest model, which is like full hand gestures that is in sync with what you're saying. So some of the earlier versions of the technology was like waist up, where it doesn't have hands, but now they're kind of full body. They can kind of gesticulate in the language and kind of the kind of the body language that is kind of tied to what you're saying, right? And then also with these magical kind of foundational models, which is you've seen all over the internet, right? I think it's also just getting increasingly good enough for a lot of these things. They're still kind of hard to manage and hard to kind of tame. Yeah. And they're also kind of pretty short form. But I think give this a few years, right? I think we'll get to a level where.
So you think it's a few years? You think a few years till we hit the uncanny valley when it's indistinguishable?
It depends on kind of what type of content. If it's like corporate content, what we do, I think we are there.
Okay.
But if it's like things you watch in the cinema, there will still be a few years.
And when this happens and these lines blur, how do you think the world will change? And you guys are at the real forefront. How will we deal with deepfakes?
I think we have like had the system since we started the company, since we met you back in the early days, right? This framework around the 3 C's, so consent, collaboration, and control, which means that you can't just upload anybody to our system and make like a video of them saying something they have ever said. So we have like pretty strong kind of consent system. So every avatar, every person on the platform has given explicit consent to kind of giving their likeness and digitizing their likeness. We also have really strong kind of content moderation, which means that you can't just type anything out in the platform. So we are pretty strict on what you can actually produce. And if you think about content moderation in the internet, that's typically only moderated on the point of distribution. So that's kind of when you actually upload it to Facebook or TikTok or whatever. That's kind of the point of moderation, where we actually moderate it on the creation, right? That's kind of in the Word document. It's kind of being moderated. You can't even type out hate speech and these type of things. That's kind of how strict we are with kind of trying to kind of enforce this on the level of creation. And then we also have like collaboration, right? I think one thing is our system not being abused and kind of misused for some of these things, but it's obviously as these technologies democratize, it become easier and easier to kind of produce these things with open source and so forth. It's obviously important that we think about this more on an internet-wide scale. So how do we kind of make sure that we believe what we see and kind of have the trust in the internet and the information that we consume?
Do you have a second giant idea for solving that problem?
I think it'll be less about has this been manipulated or changed by AI. It will be more, is this the original meaning with the piece of content? So it's the media provenance. Okay. Where if you think about all photos on the internet, right, I think 99% of them have been through a photo filter or Photoshop. And even when you take a picture on your iPhone today, it actually does changing the light systems and the kind of manipulation. Is that AI too?
Okay.
It's kind of it's less about has it been manipulated or not. It's more, is this the original meaning? And if that provenance changes, right? So if I take a news clip from BBC and kind of changing the anchor's kind of motions on that, then the provenance breaks. And when I upload that to YouTube, it'll kind of use a Shazam style understanding. Has this clip been uploaded before? And has the original meaning been altered? I think that's kind of, how we think about how this will be solved at scale.
There's this great BBC drama about deepfakes and the sort of real problems in that start when you get live deepfakes, right? So this person goes on BBC News and does a live interview, and the real politician is talking, giving one message, and then it's going out broadcast live, a slightly different, very different message, right? How close are we to live deepfakes, or it doesn't have to be deepfakes, but just I guess live Synthesia?
Yeah, I think we're working on these capabilities now. I think that's also kind of a big picture where we think this is moving from this kind of one-directional broadcast into much more kind of conversational pieces, right? You're also kind of talking to AI today with your Grok or with your OpenAI or whatever you're using, right? You're kind of, speaking and using the voice mode. And the natural next step is also kind of having a face to some of those capabilities, right? So I think we're getting closer to kind of that real-time world. And I think kind of, the security and the provenance obviously will kind of have to kind of, move with it. And I'm pretty secure, feel pretty good about how we kind of thinking and tackling these type of things today already.
Do you feel good about it? I mean, so obviously this is massively positive, right? You talked about the creativity you're going to unleash for the world with your technology, and so clearly there is so much good there. But it is worrying, right? The world of deepfakes and what effect that can have on democracy. What part of you sort of lies awake at night and thinking, am I going to be responsible for something kind of horrific or in the world? Do you worry about that at all? We talked about it. You've got a young child.
Yeah, I actually don't worry about it. I think we've kind of gone a long way, and I think some of the things we've seen of how I think we all talk about technology will disrupt a lot of things, and AI will have a huge kind of impact on our society, and we all agree. I think it will actually strengthen our institutions. I think we'll start to have to trust BBC even more than we do today, because now they will be able to kind of create hundreds of BBCs down the line, right? Because the production, the journalistic things, it's going to be easier and easier and easier, and the barriers to entry is going to be lower and lower and lower. And that's kind of why we'll kind of gravitate to some of these institutions that we're really kind of trusting today. And I think being able to kind of, thinking and changing our worldview from default trusting to default being skeptical, unless it's kind of coming from critical sources. I think that's kind of where in the world we're moving to right now. I think this kind of provenance thing is going to be something that has to be rolled out on an internet-wide scale to kind of bring that kind of security and that kind of trust back.
What's the craziest possible future we can imagine with digital avatars?
I think there's obviously kind of, the things that we're working on now is kind of this more conversational piece, right? Where you can think about a lot of your business operations are actually being automated with kind of conversations. There's a lot of like structured calls and businesses that is very repeatable, that has very low value, can kind of be onboarding calls, it can kind of be cybersecurity training, it can be customer education. Some of these kind of, mechanics that is requiring a lot of like very rudimentary kind of human power, but it's valuable enough to kind of put a human in front of other humans to make sure that they can understand certain concepts. I think that's kind of the world where we're moving to, where it's less about creating MP4 files cheaper and faster, but it's actually delivering full understanding, right? Where we're actually certifying that you've understood the information by being quizzed, by being kind of, making sure that you understand the materials, right? And the thing that's kind of going from these passive communication flows that happening every day, where people are zoning out, they're watching things on 2x speed, they're clicking through security awareness training without like understanding anything, right? And I think that's kind of where the world where you're actually certifying people have understood it before you can kind of complete stuff.
Oh wow, so it's sort of like the LLMs, the intelligence of OpenAI matched with, digital avatars that feel very real and kind of that interaction back and forth.
I want to go back to that idea of this personalized feed. So it's one thing for a producer to serve someone else, a consumer, a video which they made with AI. But this idea potentially of us all as consumers being able to create our own entertainment, essentially, right? Instead of scrolling mindlessly through Netflix and not finding something for 20 minutes that you want to watch, you can just go, I want to watch a drama about, two cops in London who are running around King's Cross trying to solve a murder. Like, how close are we to consumers self-serving and self-creating the content that they want to watch, which is Netflix level quality?
Yeah, I think it'll still be a few years before we kind of get to that level.
But will we get there?
Yeah, we'll 100% get there.
Yeah.
I think to get that with a cost and kind of inference cost, I think it'll be maybe 5 years, where you can kind of really produce Netflix style content that is just continuous, where you can make 10 more seasons of whatever kind of, pick your favorite show, right? But I think it's interesting, right, where we kind of, going from this one size fits all, which is kind of the movie theater, right, to a much more personalized, contextualized, localized version, right, where every kind of piece of content can kind of be very unique, and it can also be unique to a situation, right? So if you are driving your car, you probably want to hear the information as a podcast. If you're sitting home at night, you probably want a like Netflix style movie. If you're at work, it could be like, a condensed kind of document with all kind of, the things, right? So I think you'll have this ability to kind of, transform the information to be consumed in different formats. And you can even get your slide deck as a Netflix video, or you can have your whatever brand pitch book or pitch idea as kind of different formats, right? And I think as you also get closer to how the audience wants to kind of perceive and understand that, you can also kind of, tailor that on the recipient end. Even though that the creator might have some idea of how this should be created, there can be that recipient can also kind of, personalize it and contextualize that information in the way they want.
I don't think great new shows will be built that way, but personally.
I kind of love that idea of
I love the idea,
10 more seasons of the show you always loved.
I think
you're gutted is over.
Exactly. I think if it's already been made, then they could extend the season.
Or like change the ending from don't kill her, kill him, or whatever.
I mean, this is sort of, parody, like a slight tragedy of what's going on with AI right now, is that it needs the internet, or the LLMs need the internet to feed their models, but the kind of the incentives for creating that content are going away, right? So it's sort of like a victim of its own success. It's interesting how that element will play out, because I think you need original content to feed the AI beast, right?
I think with synthetic data and some of these things, that's really starting to kind of become good enough. I think it's good enough. I think we have so much data already that I think we've seen that with the data, right, we can create incredible things. But of course, original ideas is going to be the ultimate test for AGI, right? How can you make new physics breakthroughs? How can you actually kind of, really kind of, take the world understanding to a next level with kind of, new capabilities.
Just for listeners, synthetic data, tell us about
that. So I think as you're kind of, running out of kind of humanly written content or movies produced on YouTube or whatever, there's kind of, going to be a need to kind of, train your AI models, AI systems on synthetic data that is not created by humans. So synthetically generated data, right, that will either kind of, change or kind of, remask some of the biases your model have to kind of, fill the gaps, but it could also kind of, take your models and take your AI system to the next level by feeding its systems data that is not really have enough in original world, and producing that with synthetic data that then trains AI systems.
And that's happening now. You're already there. Already doing that.
It's starting there.
It's starting.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is already kind of really big field. Yeah.
Cool. Well, shifting gears a little bit to the business itself. Many of our listeners are entrepreneurs. I think they'd love to hear a bit more about your plans for the business. One thing we were discussing before this chat is that, when the marginal cost of creating video is dropping to almost zero, even in this format, how do you think you will create and capture value moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think especially for us, right, we're very focused on the enterprise, so working with the biggest companies in the world, right? And I think what they're buying from Synthesia is less about a video clip generator. It's actually a full workflow, right?
Yeah. Was it originally a video clip generator they were buying?
It was, yeah, 100%. Okay. We were kind of delivering clips for a long time, and the early versions of the platform, you created an avatar, you downloaded the clip, you used it in Adobe products to actually kind of, build kind of, the full video edits, right? Where there's more to a video than just somebody talking to you. There's animations, transitions, music, all the stuff that actually makes a video a compelling video, right? So we kind of build we build kind of the full kind of product experience around this paradigm that generated media is different from camera recorded content, and that's kind of the product experience that we kind of been tailoring for today, and also leveraging all the facts that every pixel is software rendered as opposed to be sensor captured, right? And that has kind of been been kind of the product experience and the product paradigm that we're building for now. But I think what we've seen is our kind of mode as we kind of going and maturing as a business from a research lab. Can we actually make the technology work? To, oh wow, can we actually build a unique product experience that is native to the fact that this is kind of AI? And then next thing is, okay, wow, we have such a great distribution. We have a license to talk with all these great companies. They have a lot of problems they want to solve with visual information. How can we take and build custom workflows that is actually delivering really high-end business outcomes for our customers, right? So I think there will be, as kind of video creation drops in cost, I still think it actually is on the rise because you are constantly also evolving the capabilities, the fidelity, we're still not at Netflix style customer onboarding in any kind of company, right? But I think we probably want to, right? If we can get like a LeBron James style kind of onboarding video if I'm a new employee at Nike, right? With a really high production kind of quality of how do you actually become a Nike employee, right? We're still kind of a little bit away from that. So I still think in the short to medium term, the cost will rise, but then it will kind of eventually kind of go to kind of, to zero, towards zero, right? At least. But I think at that point, right, we'll kind of be much more embedded in workflows, and there's more value than just kind of, the frames, but actually kind of inserting ourselves in more business impact, where today, right, we are delivering MP4 files that is an input to an outcome you want to produce. If I go to any of the CFOs in the Fortune 500 and say, hey, you're creating faster and cheaper videos with Synthesia, they're going to say, so what? I want to kind of, have lower customer support cost. I want to have higher kind of, productivity in my sales force with better enabled salespeople.
Tied into business outcomes.
All these things, right? And I think that's kind of where we're moving to now, where instead of just delivering MP4 files, actually delivering business outcomes.
So you're 100 million of revenue today, or thereabouts, $2 billion valuation. How do you become a $100 billion company?
I think it's kind of moving into... We think there is actually a pretty big opportunity to build a really big standalone, because the paradigm for generated media is so different than camera recorded content. And if you think about the internet today, right, everything is kind of built for camera recorded content. You shoot something with a camera, you put it into the Adobe products, and you put it on YouTube. Those three kind of, processes are completely air-gapped and completely different, right? And you can't really kind of go to a YouTube video and say, hey, make me 200 versions of this and A/B test my ad. That's not possible today, because you can't talk to the video editing and you can't talk to the camera, right? But what Synthesia has built is kind of this fully connected thing where you can also create the content, right? But you also have the editing and the collaboration kind of capabilities. And then you have the distribution of it. And that means that when you unify those three things, right, you can also start to build reinforcement or kind of, human in the kind of, self-improving systems, right? So if I can see that people are dropping off after 5 seconds of my video, I can render a new version that is becoming better at solving those problems, right?
Wow.
And I think that's like a little bit of the future of kind of building these kind of engagement algorithms on behalf of our customers to kind of drive higher performance through their videos. And I think that's also kind of, where the big paradigm of this is, right? Where we think that, kind of, right now we're using new methods to produce old formats. So faster and cheaper MP4 files. But in the future, right, we're kind of, enabling completely net new formats, new media objects that you can never upload to YouTube, right? That you have to kind of consume real-time avatars, interactive, fully localized, fully contextualized, integrated with your CRM. So we say,
cool vision.
Hey, Cameron, welcome back to Spiritland. Can't wait to serve you another gin tonic.
Tonic. No tonic.
Just gin.
Just gin.
So the classic kind of annoying VC question to founders over the last 15, 20 years has been, well, why can't Google do this? The question now is, why can't OpenAI do it? You've talked a little bit there about the kind of stickiness, how embedded you are with customers. You're solving a very specific set of problems for them, where even if someone like OpenAI can match the technology, they just don't have the focus, I guess, to go as deep on a very specific problem that you're solving for customers. Is that it? Or do you still feel like you've got to win on technology?
Yeah, I think we'll gradually become more and more applied, where we started as a very kind of, can we actually make this work as a scientific breakthrough? But I think it's very naive to think that you can kind of keep up with the model layer. I think it'll be very, very hard, and very few companies that has the capital and the resources to do that. So I think over time we'll become less and less and less kind of, scientific blue sky. I still think there is some short to medium term time to market that we want to win on and kind of continue to stay ahead. But I think what we do is that we work backwards from customer outcomes. We want to deliver a very specific customer outcome, and we are going to take the best kind of off the shelf model. We're going to take off the best kind of things and kind of really enable that thing. And there are some things where we also work with a lot of voice providers, but we needed to build our own voice technology to have the best accent preservation, because for our avatars, our executives, our kind of customers creating personal representations of themselves, they want to hear their own accent, and we couldn't get that in the market. So we had to kind of build that and kind of invest in that. And that will obviously also be a solved problem over time, but it will give us a time advantage and a go-to-market advantage, right? But I think what we see is that we are less of like an interface to an AI model. If you're just like a singular modality kind of company, I think it will be very hard to kind of be competitive long term, as that will be very kind of hard to kind of keep up. But if you're actually selling a full workflow, a full outcome to a customer, they couldn't care less if this is OpenAI, Claude, or Gemini. They care about, is this faster, cheaper, more productive? Is this keeping my company safe? That is the 4 reasons why you buy software and buy anything as companies, right? And I think that's kind of where we kind of moving and kind of being much more tied to business outcomes and kind of, allowing us to do that faster and cheaper for our customers.
On customers, just briefly, how AI savvy are the customers at the big corporates?
I think they're getting there. I think a few years ago, before ChatGPT, there was nobody who had any kind of AI procurement and any kind of guidelines for how to use service and kind of procure this type of stuff. I think it's kind of increasing, but it's kind of, overcorrecting a little bit in the short term, right? Where that's typical kind of this J curve of everything, right?
Yeah.
Where they kind of overcorrect. Oh, this is a completely new paradigm. We have to stop everything. We have to kind of, have a pause and everything. And then like, oh, okay, now we understand it. Let's kind of come back to earth, right?
Because you have a unique seat leading one of these cutting edge AI startups, but working with really large companies.
Exactly.
Where do you feel we are in the AI hype cycle?
I think it's hard to say, because I think it's all the kind of real on the bottom, right? But it's obviously extremely hot in at least the talent war right now. It seems completely crazy. But it's hard to kind of see, because you also have a lot of the signs of strong productivity, and we already see that really live in companies, especially on like coding. The efficiencies and the productivity gains on like your developers is just incredible, right? And I think that's kind of where it underpins a lot of the investments, right? But if you think about that global productivity can kind of go up with 10%, that is like tens of trillions in value, right? If you could look at like the global scale, and that is, and we're only investing like 500 billion on that scale, right? It looks kind of low, right? But yeah, I think it'll kind of, it's definitely hot, but it's also kind of worrying. So I'm not sure if it's gonna slow down anytime soon.
Let's talk about 996. For our listeners, 996 means working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, 6 days a week. What's your take on it, Steffen?
I think it's naive to think that you can just start a startup, especially as founders. I think it's less about being 996 in the office every day, kind of, all that time, right? But if you as a founder, I think I thought way more than 996 about my company in the early days, and probably still is, right? It's just ever consuming. And I think if you think that it's going to be a hobby thing, there's obviously many businesses and there's many different levels of ambition. And if you are building a crafty kind of e-commerce type of offering, there's obviously more of a lifestyle thing to that, and that's totally fair. But if you really want to build a global scale in such a fierce competitive kind of company, industry as AI, and try to be competitive with China and the US and so forth, it's pretty naive to not think that you have to at least work extremely hard to get a chance for that.
Do you think you got to product market fit through incredible hard work and bulldozing and just grinding? Or was it more very clever decisions and being intellectually agile?
I think a combination. I think it's also Synthesia is a pretty hard story to get, and it's still non-obvious. Oh, it's just Avatar. What is that, right? It's still, even today, is still actually a non-obvious idea, and I think most of those investors that ended up getting it who actually knows the pains of producing videos themselves, and oh, this is fucking painful.
Yeah.
And they actually kind of have the empathy for the problem, right? But I think we've kind of been also starting this company the wrong way around, in the sense that we started with solutions and applying that to problems, right? Where the typical startup is, oh, I have this problem, I want to build a solution for it, right? Where we kind of started the other way around, which meant that we went with the solution many different paths down the idea maze of kind of, is this for gaming? Is this for high-end visual effects? Is this for Hollywood movie production? Is this for high-end advertising? And that just gave us those first 3 years was extremely painful, and my hairline receded a bit over those years. But it was also just giving us so much kind of confidence once we kind of hit product market fit in 2020.
How did you know you'd hit it?
Instantly.
Yeah. Like,
it was just, we launched kind of the self-service offering of the platform. We kind of been a service, a kind of visual effects AI service for many years. And then we kind of, had this breakthrough where you can type in text, you can then go from text to speech and from speech to kind of expressions, which was kind of the magical kind of breakthrough we had in late 19. And then we kind of built the first version of the product of Synthesia that you know today in summer of 2020. And when we launched it, it was just like a magical thing that you can type in text, even though the avatars were very robotic, very static, very monotone in their kind of, body language, right? But it was just instant that we kind of hit a nerve that this is interesting for people. And I don't think we had like the ideas and the takes and turns and the vision for where it could become back then. But it was clear that we kind of hit something that was interesting to people, right? And I think it's also coming a little bit back to this I like this saying that it's easy to build a hard company and it's hard to build an easy company, in the sense that when you have a crazy idea, back then the idea was to create a Hollywood style movie on your laptop. That is kind of, inspiring to a lot of people and allows a lot of people that want to kind of come on this journey and like try to kind of, attack this crazy idea, the giant idea, right? Versus if you're kind of building accounting software number 704, you're kind of probably going to get people who's just there for the salary, who's there for like the 9 to 5, that is not like there for the full vision, right?
I'm surrounded on each side here by two Great Danes. You're if I may say so, a classic Dane. You're running this incredible AI company, one of the most exciting AI companies in the world. You're very humble. We're going to ask you to be unhumble for a minute, which we ask all of our guests as a final question. What is it about you, do you think, and your co-founder that have allowed you to go and create such an exciting company?
I think it's kind of having kind of the vision and like foresight. I think that is what Victor's magic is to really kind of see where the world is moving and being able to kind of see that before other people. So we were just at the perfect spot, right, when ChatGPT kind of became AI on everybody's lips. We already had a very fully functional product. We already kind of were AI first. It was not like a bolt-on thing that we had to kind of insert into our product, as many SaaS companies is trying to do now. But it was kind of, really building on the backbone of kind of, this breakthrough. And I think in early 23, when AI and ChatGPT was kind of coming onto the scene, there was like 5 things beyond ChatGPT you could do, right? Go into ChatGPT, write your script, put it into Synthesia. So we were just like blowing up like crazy back then.
You were very Danish. It's not about yourself. What about you? What about you as a person?
I think my superpower is probably kind of, to actually make it happen. Yes. I'm extremely executional oriented and I'm very impatient. So actually kind of transforming these lofty ideas into actually what do we do, not tomorrow, but right now.
Sounds like you
about these things.
Good match in that way then.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of, the left and the right brain between the two of us, where I'm kind of, overseeing kind of sales, operations, finance, kind of been doing everything else. And he's kind of, having a lot of the vision, thinking about the future, and I'm thinking more about the present and reporting a bit on the past to the investors.
Brilliant. Steffen, thank you so much for sharing your giant idea. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.